Well, we welcome you back to our study in the churches of Revelation. Today, we begin our first study in the church in Philadelphia. So, we begin by reading our scripture, which is, of course, from Revelation chapter 3, beginning with the 7th verse and reading through to the 13th verse. So, follow along as I read. To the angel of the church in Philadelphia, write, these are the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David. What he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. I know your deeds. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, but you have kept my word and have not denied my name. I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are liars. I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. Since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. I'm coming soon. Hold on to what you have so that no one will take your crown. The one who is victorious, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. Never again will they leave it. I will write on them the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which is coming down out of heaven from my God. And I will also write on them my new name. Whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Well, we're going to talk about the background of Philadelphia. And again, like with the other churches, the background of this city, Jesus weaves into what he says to them, and it plays into the message. And so, again, I think it's important to look at this. Philadelphia was originally part of the kingdom of Pergamum, and Philadelphia was founded in 189 BC by King Eumenes II. You'll see a picture of him here first. He named it Philadelphia, and that literally means brotherly love. And he named it in honor of his brother and the man who would succeed him, Attalus II. And it's fitting that he gave it that name because he and his brother were very, very close. They were inseparable and had an unfailing love for each other. So it's really kind of a nice thing that he named the city in honor of his brother. The purpose of the city being founded was to spread the Greek culture and language throughout the whole area of Asia. And you see here a picture of where Philadelphia was in relation to the other 7 churches. So you see that where we started, they kind of go up and then back, and you see we'll end up at Laodicea here at the bottom. Anyway, it was really created then with the idea of kind of a missionary purpose. And interestingly enough, it became that way for a Christian purpose as well. An earthquake destroyed Philadelphia in 17 AD. Now, it was really kind of bad because this earthquake was so bad that it kept affecting Philadelphia for many, many years. Aftershocks were almost as bad as the earthquake itself, and continued to cause harm to the buildings. In fact, I've never really quite heard of earthquakes quite as bad as this. The walls were very insecure. In fact, you see behind me, this is Philadelphia, and they had to build these huge pillars right here. Again, you see behind me, to try to hold the walls up. I've never seen pillars this large for buildings really that were not very, very tall at all. And what they tell us is that, of course, every time there was an aftershock, the people were in a panic, and they would run out into the streets to try to avoid having the walls collapse on them. All the walls in the city had big cracks in them from these aftershocks. And really what would happen is that people would come into the city during the day, and then they would move out into the countryside at night because they're afraid that the city would have a aftershock at night, and that they would be caught in the collapsing ceilings and walls, or I should say roofs and walls collapsing on them. And so they would go to the farms at night. And there's very rich farmland around them. So the city was basically a place for daytime business, and they would stay out in the night. Again, it was a rather strange kind of situation with people coming in during the day and moving out at night, and the city being kind of almost abandoned at nighttime. So you can imagine how rough that was. Because it was so bad, one of the Caesars by the name of Tiberius quit collecting taxes for a time, and to give them a chance to recover financially. And because of that, they renamed the city Neo Caesarea, which means the new town of Caesar. Now, there's a little bit of reference to that later on in what Jesus says to Philadelphia. But after Tiberius died, they quit calling it that Neo Caesarea, but it kind of fell to the wayside and it went back to the old name of Philadelphia. At any rate, it had this kind of a history of these pillars. Again, Jesus comes back and refers to this thing with pillars. It's kind of a neat thing how he weaves that into the message. Now, this became a real center for Christianity, really important center for Christianity, not just in the time of Jesus speaking to them, but for many, many centuries. There was a famous prophetess by the name of Mia, who was, very well known. She's supposed to have been one of the daughters of Philip, who was mentioned in the book of Acts. And she had a ministry that spanned for 60 years, and says that she had just an incredible ministry. Now, I had never heard of her, but anyway, she is quite famous in her time and had a gift of prophecy that was well known. And even when the Muslims started moving across this part of Asia, Philadelphia held out against the Muslims for many, many centuries. They refused to bow to the Islamic expansion. And although the Islamic armies besieged Philadelphia many times, they did not fall. They remained faithful. And it wasn't until a Christian army, and this is the sad part, a Christian army allied itself with a Muslim army, did Philadelphia fall in the 14th century. But even today, even though they're in Turkey, nearly half the residents are Christians. So Philadelphia, even to this day, has a very strong Christian presence, even there in the middle of an Islamic country. So Philadelphia has remained a very strong place for Christians. Now, Philadelphia, at the time of the writing of Revelation, had a large number of temples to a variety of gods, and so much so that it was called Little Athens. It was in a grape-growing area, and because of that, especially, they honored the god Dionysius, who was the god of the grapes. Now, the Dionysius was the worship of Dionysius was a particularly, well, you imagine grapes, wine, a lot of drunken kinds of things went on with the worship of Dionysius. There's also a significant Jewish presence in Philadelphia, and the Jews here, sometimes the Jews got along with the Christians okay, but not in Philadelphia. They were particularly hostile to the Christian community, and because the Christians had a very vibrant witness in Philadelphia, and because the Jewish people were very hostile to the Christians, there was a great deal of tension. And the Jews here led the persecution against the Christians more so than in other areas, and were very angry at them. So what we find is there is, and Jesus had harsh words against this Jewish community here, the very harsh words. And in fact, I think that if you look in the New Testament, outside of the gospel writings, the harshest condemnation of anybody in the Jewish community is found here in these words that Jesus says to the Jewish community in Philadelphia. So they must have been particularly difficult to get along with. Now, when we look at what Jesus says to the church in Philadelphia, there are two churches that Jesus had nothing good to say about. And we just talked about one with Sardis, and we'll talk about one next time with Laodicea. There are two churches that Jesus had no bad things to say about. That was Smyrna, and this one in Philadelphia. Jesus has no bad things to say about Philadelphia. What he does say is a lot of words of encouragement. He encourages them. They're obviously having to deal with a lot of difficulty. Now, it doesn't seem to be a very large church. It does seem to be a church that faces a lot of struggles. And my friends, when we look at this, we need to remember, the picture of a lot of what we look at when we look online and we look on television and so on. We like to show these mega churches. We like to show these big, huge Christian ministries. And if we're not careful, we start to think that's the normal expression of Christianity. But, that isn't the normal expression of Christianity. I know that, I guess many years ago, I think when I was a young officer, I remember hearing at the time that in the United States, half of the churches in the United States were under 50 members. Half of them were under 50 members, not these thousands and thousands of people that you see, and so on. They were small churches. I suspect now it's even larger percentage than half is under 50 members. And so, a lot of people overseas think of all the American churches, all these huge churches with, big buildings and all these big things. Well, that's not true. It's not true at all. And I strongly suspect that if you go to other countries, you find the same thing. They're not rich. They don't have huge congregations and so on and so forth. We tend to think that you look at these, especially the prosperity gospel, with their presentation that, you name it, you claim it, and God wants you to be richer and richer and richer and richer. That's just not the way Christianity has been. In fact, a lot of times it's been struggling. It's been facing great difficulty. Where in many of the places where the Salvation Army operates, we are a minority religion. We're a minority within a minority. We're outnumbered. We're in hostile environments where our very lives are threatened. And we need to remember that like the people in Philadelphia, we need encouragement. And Christ is dealing here in Philadelphia with a church that needs encouragement. And he's not condemning them. He's saying to them, stay strong, hold on to what you have. And he's not saying to them, oh, look, you're going to be richer. You're going to have big cars. You're going to have lots of money. He doesn't say anything like that. That's not how you measure success. And we need to be very careful. If you are trying to believe a gospel that says you're going to be rich and you're going to be famous and you're going to have lots of money in your bank account, that is not the gospel that's in our Bible. You need to look at what Jesus says to the church in Philadelphia. That's the truth. And that's what we need to look at here in the next few weeks. Well, we'll start looking at that more closely starting next week. But think on these things. Look at what Jesus says to this church in Philadelphia. This is a church that's within God's will. And that's where you need to make sure you are in all that you do. God bless you.